And I'm going to continue to let people in. And we're going to just kind of get started. I want to make sure and respect your time. I'm super grateful that you're all here. If you don't know, I'm Jamie Bachman. I'm the program coordinator of the Nebraska Master Naturalist here in the good old state of Nebraska. Welcome to Master Naturalist Mondays. We are rounding out. We have one more, and I'll talk here at the end. We're rounding out the first season of Master Naturalist Mondays, and I've just been really, I look forward to every single one of these. I'm so glad that we've been hanging out. We've been getting to hang out. If you've never been to a Master Naturalist Monday, this is the flow of the hour is I will do a little reflective prompt. And this is an opportunity for you to contribute in the chat or unmute. This is our time together for the members and also folks that are, this is open to the statewide to Nebraska, the community of Nebraska. So and when I put up the reflective prompt, feel free to unmute and contribute to the conversation. That's an important piece of this time together, is for us to be able to share ideas and communicate with each other. Then we'll have, I'll introduce our presenter. I'm really excited to have Gabby here, and Gabby will present, and then we'll have some time for questions. And then at the end, I will give a little update on some events and some things that are happening in the larger piece of the Nebraska Master Naturalist program. And I think I'm going to share my screen and get moving on that. Yes, yes, yes. I think that's what we'll do. Okay. Getting everything set up here. Thank you for your patience. All right. So our topic for today is urban wildlife. And so our reflective prompts typically are in parallel to the topic of conversation of the presentation today. So I thought we would just gather some ideas, just gather our thoughts and feelings about urban wildlife. And so we have time here to pop in the chat or unmute and contribute to this conversation on what are your thoughts and feelings about, because it's a big spectrum that people can feel about urban wildlife, right? This is one of those human dimension topics too. I really think can be really engaging. We have reports of seeing rabbits galore last night. The waning full moon. I wonder if that had something to do with it. We have folks that are not a fan of 13-line ground squirrels.
I myself am not a fan of moles, I gotta say.
Well, and this time of year, we're starting to see a lot more bats at Nebraska Wildlife Rehab. They're coming inside because it's getting colder. And you're seeing your raccoons, coming up looking for food, trying to find shelter, as well, staying warm. So it's just something for people to be aware of, that they get cold too. They're trying to find nice little cozy places. So
thank you for that. Yeah, with the seasons, when the seasons change, isn't it just lovely to see how the wildlife respond? We have a couple other things here in the chat. Neil loves to see the fox and raccoons in Lincoln. Love to see urban wildlife using the trail systems, like on the bike trails. And let's see. Kathy reports, we have to respect wildlife as we encroach their habitat. We need to learn to live with them, not eliminate them. We have some people that are loving that comment. Kathy. Kim says, because we are located, she's located by near a trail and a park. We see lots, she sees lots of foxes, possums, deer, birds, turkey vultures, songbirds, raptors, red-bellied woodpeckers. We have lots of folks that are loving urban wildlife in the urban settings.
Jamie, the white-footed mice and the deer mice are looking for homes too.
This time of year, right, Glenn? Good to see you, Glenn.
Hi, you're looking good. My surgery was successful.
Yay. So glad you could be here.
All right.
Yeah, it's that time of year where they're coming in, right?
Yes, they like to find little cozy places. And people need to determine the difference between the house mouse and the white-footed and the deer mouse. They look an awful lot alike, except the wild guys have bigger ears.
Why do they need to know the difference?
Well, if it's a house mouse, you might eliminate it. But if it's one of our friends, we'll move them back out of our house gently and leave them alive.
Well
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Let's see. Some folks had some skunks. Yeah, whenever my dog runs out in the dark, I'm like, it better not be a skunk, right? Just leave the skunks alone. Some folks love the wildlife, but also don't want them eating their garden. Comments as they're typical, like they seem to often be viewed as pests, but love to see urban wildlife. Oh, we have someone, because we had some folks that say they didn't like 13-line ground squirrels, but they are great prey for bull snakes. And we love our snakes, right? See possums, lots of foxes, lots of love for urban wildlife. That's good. That's great to hear.
Something else I just wanted to share is that if anyone has people asking them questions about wildlife and they don't know the answer, is you can always call us at Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, and our staff will, gladly help answer the questions or maybe help mitigate an issue that they are having, help them redirect wildlife to where they need to be. So just a thought.
Thank you for that. I will add everybody that's on here, you will get a post webinar email for everyone that's registered, and I will add Nebraska Wildlife Rehabilitation, their contact information in that follow-up email.
Oh, perfect.
Any last comments or contributions to this conversation? I see Wayne or Will over in Wayne put in looks like a trail cam photo of a raccoon. Thank you all for contributing. I really appreciate it. That was great feedback. Let me see here. Let's stop sharing. Okay. Well, let's get going on our presenter here. I would like to, let me close this out. I'd like to introduce, Gabby, how do you pronounce your last name?
Tegeder.
Tegeder. Thank you. I met Gabby Tegeder is a adjunct professor of geology and geography at UNO, and I met Gabby this spring at the Core 24 training at Gretna, and she has already completed all of her requirements for the certification, the Master Naturalist certification. So good job, Gabby. She also came and presented and led our tour of Toadstool at our our annual conference this year. Gabby's just been one of because that was my first training, and Gabby has just always been a constant. I've been in communication with you. I've really gotten to know you and your family a little bit too, and I've always just so grateful to be able to chat with you and hang out with you. You're just a lovely spirit to have around. So thank you for participating. Thank you for offering to present here for your fellow Master Naturalists in our Nebraska community. Let's see. I also want to give a little bit more about you. Nebraska native, research interests in animal geography, geoscience education, and wetlands hydrology. She has taught classes at UNO, UNL, Metro Community College, and Midland University, and taught science summer classes at UNO. UNO's Aim for the Stars for 24 years. She also has volunteered for the Nebraska Humane Society, Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, and Nebraska Master Naturalist programs. So I'm really grateful to have you here. You are a gem of a human. So I'm gonna stop talking and let you take it away, Gabby.
Oh, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, hopefully that wasn't too much. That's genuine, authentic, how I feel about you.
Well, that's awesome. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Gabrielle Tegeder, and I guess we will get started right away. We'll just jump into it since Jamie's already introduced me. I don't have to do that. So I do have a big interest in wildlife. Obviously, I'm not a biology major or a zoology major, but I've encountered wildlife my whole life, as most of us have. That's why so many people are interested really in the Master Naturalist program, I think, is their connection with wildlife. A lot of it is. So kind of, first of all, a definition of what wildlife is, or a couple definitions. Wildlife really refers to animals that are not domesticated and generally not dependent on humans for survival. And then the other big definition we need to know for this is urban. What is an urban area? And basically, an urban area is a city. It's a place where people live in large numbers. So, if you live on a farm or you live in a tiny town, we don't consider that an urban area, but a bigger city is an urban area. And the reason I asked Jamie about if she would like me to talk about this topic is just that it's one of the things I'm interested in. I've done some research on. I talk about it in my classes sometimes. And sort of the very idea of urban expansion means that necessarily wild areas will shrink. There's no way around it. And the animals that already lived in those woods or wetlands or forests or grasslands, they were there first, and they're not always able to move. And that can lead to points of contact with humans. And those points of contact happen in what we might think of as a transition zone, or a connection between human and wild places. So areas that once were wild and are transitioning to urban are bound to have elements of both. And that's where we find most of our animal encounters. Let's move here. Okay. So the big problem, first of all, urban expansion. Our population grows, and so our cities have to expand to accommodate those people. And also our farms have to grow to feed those people. And people need shelter and electricity and transportation, and we need our cell phones and our computers. We need lots of things, basically. And that means we need more resources to house and clothe and take care of those people. And the more people we have, the more space we need. And we use that space for everything, right? We use it to live in, to work in, to play in. We need schools and grocery stores and gas stations and everything. And these things are things that in geography we say it's a built environment. It's still an environment. A lot of people don't think of a city as an environment or as a habitat, but it really is. It's just catering specifically to people, right? And as those people grow, they're going to encroach on those wild areas. It stands to reason then that the animals that are caught in newly urbanized areas especially are going to either have to move on or they get absorbed into the city too. So, as those cities are growing, we're just going to encounter more and more animals all the time. While we accept the idea of maybe encountering something like a deer or a raccoon while we're camping in a state park or if we're walking on a hiking trail, we're not always so keen on encountering them in our backyard or in our attic or on our street, right? Yet often we invite them in, just not on purpose. We do things that bring those animals to us. For one thing, we have really good environments for animals in some cases. We have gardens where deer and rabbits and groundhogs have plentiful food, right? We have yards with very few trees. So things like moles and rabbits would like that. We provide lots of nesting material for birds and squirrels. We put out food. While you might put out a hummingbird feeder and figure that's perfectly okay, and it generally is. Hummingbirds aren't usually a big nuisance to people. But then we have places like on the picture on that top right there, you see, that is the Alpine Inn that is in Omaha. And they purposely would throw out their food scraps to invite raccoons in so that people could see them right outside the windows while they ate. And there were some really big, fat, and aggressive raccoons there. And then also, sometimes it's just accidental, sometimes there's just no other options, so the animals just kind of live where they are, and we're going to talk about that part in just a minute. One last thing I want to talk about before we get into the animals themselves is scale. All right, because scale is really important in this subject. While a small town of 2,000 and a city of 200,000 are both built environments, they're going to affect the natural landscape around them in different ways. If you have fewer people, fewer roads, more trees, less pollution, you're going to get more animals, right? Because those animals just aren't as heavily impacted. So you're more likely to see that urban wildlife in the smaller urban areas than in the big ones. Larger urban areas, often you don't see wildlife very much at all in the very big cities. However, once an urban area is established, animals are very likely to, if they find a place that's really good for them, like a park or a creek running through the city, those are sort of natural shelters for animals, and they're corridors for animals to move along. And so you're gonna, even if you think you're gonna get rid of animals, as some cities try to, you're gonna always get more as long as you have those natural spaces. And of course, we want those natural spaces. All right, so basically I want to focus on several things, but first of all, what kinds of places do we encounter wildlife in our cities, right? In our homes, that's one. I have here, of course, bats. I personally have had it more than one time where I've had bats in various places I've lived in. And sometimes it's okay for me to catch them, and sometimes I have to call somebody to come catch them for me because I can't do it that time. And of course, some things like with bats, it's not always a good idea to catch them unless you know what you're doing. Because bats, of course, can be a rabies vector, like many wild animals can. In general, if they're in your home, it's probably better if you can't get them out without touching them to call a professional to come get them, like Nebraska Wildlife Rehab. We also encounter them in our yards and gardens. This is probably the #1 place where people are going to see wildlife, urban wildlife, because we spend a lot of time in our house and in our yard. And so we're going to encounter those animals that are sort of attracted to the environment that we make in our, especially our backyards, where we have things like gardens and sheltered places and nice shady trees and so on. There are, however, other places that we can sometimes find them that we may not even know the animals are there. A lot of times animals will take over abandoned places simply because no people are there to kick them out. Right now, many people know Lincoln has a huge fox population, and it's getting bigger. And a lot of that, it actually has to do with abandoned homes that the foxes are able to dig underneath and live in the yards, and there's really no one there to stop them or to remove them to another place. So they are thriving. Sadly, another place we do see wildlife is when they are moving, and generally when they're moving in our paths across streets. Unfortunately, a lot of animals do get killed. And so some of our contact with wildlife is not even good contact. Of course, some of it is very negative, especially for the animal itself. And finally, the reason that all of these animals are where we see them is a lack of choices. They don't have a good native habitat, habitat to go to. So they have to kind of make do with what there is. And if that is a broken shutter going into an attic, or if that is an open area underneath a porch, if that's the safest place for them, that's the place they're going to end up going. Now, when I started studying animals, I kind of classified animals into wildlife, urban wildlife, into sort of 3 groups. And the first group is what I call incidental species. And these are species that, yes, they are in our cities, but they don't really care that we're here. You know, we aren't a major factor in whether they're here or not. I mean, we may provide them something good that they're using, but they're probably going to be here whether we're here or whether we're not. Most of the insects we encounter are going to be like this. Insects and arachnids and any kind of bugs are going to be there regardless. Most of the birds we see are actually incidental species too. We might give them some really great opportunities for nesting or for food because we feed them, we provide them shelters and houses, but they would still get along fine even if we aren't here, right? Another one is most snakes and reptiles. And this is really with the caveat of, with the exception of roads. Roads are very bad for most reptiles. Reptiles do not fare as well as mammals do on roads. And, but generally snakes and other reptiles, they don't seek people out at all. They don't care if we're there or not, but they are attracted to things like mice and rats and birds, things that might be near our houses. And then we have squirrels. We've all seen squirrels, right? Anywhere there are trees, you're going to have squirrels. But again, they don't really care if we're there or not. And then the last one is bats. When we encounter bats, it's almost always because they're looking for roosting places. They're going to attics and garages and trees and so on, especially as the one representative said, this time of year when they're looking for a place to hibernate for the winter. The second kind of species that I like to kind of classify as a second kind of species, or second group of species, are the opportunistic species. In other words, they love being where we are. We make it life easier for them. We may not want them there, but they want to be there in a lot of cases. Raccoons are one of those. Raccoons do very well wherever there are people because raccoons are so intelligent and so clever and so versatile. They can eat anything, they can open things, they can get into very small places, and they have really good memories. So raccoons do really well with our environments, our built environments. Opossums actually do surprisingly well with people. Opossums tend to be reclusive and nocturnal and pretty slow. And you really don't see them except at night, if you're lucky. I consider myself lucky when I see an opossum. But they do like to raid trash cans. They do like to raid gardens. So they do pretty well around houses. And then skunks. In Nebraska, skunks are considered a rabies vector. And so it's very difficult to rehab them. I know as of several years ago, Nebraska Wildlife Rehab couldn't even rehab them anymore. I think that's recently changed, where if someone has the rabies vaccine already, if they've been vaccinated for it, they're allowed to, but it's only very specific people. In general, if regular people come in contact with a skunk, that skunk is usually not going to survive the process. Generally, skunks aren't really interested in human food unless it's obvious. They're not like raccoons where they can get in as easily. More often, skunks are looking for shelter when they're encountering people than food. And then the last one we have is foxes. Foxes, they are learning to live with humans. 20 years ago, you did not see many foxes in urban areas, but they're learning. Again, they're a big problem in Lincoln, I know. But they're also a problem in some places in Omaha. They're a growing problem. They do eat mice and rats and squirrels and opossums and other animals that are in our cities. Also, frankly, people like foxes. People like foxes better than they like opossums. They think opossums are scary or ugly, which I don't understand. They think skunks, of course, are smelly, which is true. Raccoons, are very destructive, which is also true, but foxes people really like. And so when you see a fox, you kind of feel lucky to see it. And you certainly aren't going to go trying to kill it, or at least most people wouldn't. But unfortunately, what that does is that also makes the population explode because there's nothing really holding them back. And then the last group of species that I kind of have categorized are what I call opportunistic species. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We're still on the opportunistic species. I was thinking, wait, I just said opportunistic. We just have a few more. I lost myself there. I thought I was at the end. All right, we do have a couple more here. Just 3 on this slide, though. We have mice and rats. Of course, that one's pretty obvious. They're mostly just problems when they're inside our homes. Very few people actually see them outside of their homes. Very few people even see them inside of their homes unless they set a trap. So you don't really see mice and rats too much. Moles, which are the one I really don't like because of my yard, but they are what they are. They do what they do. But moles are going to eat grubs, which are going to thrive in our lawns and our gardens. And then the rabbits, of course. We have gardens, we have grassy lawns. They like brush, they like long grass, they like bushes, they like gardens, they like everything we do with our yards. And of course, they proliferate very quickly. So where they find a good place, you will get a big population explosion pretty quickly. All right, now we get to our last one, and that is the accidental species. The ones that really don't live very well around people, that have conflicts with people. And this is really where the problems mostly come in. All right, big one is deer. Deer are most often found around large parks or creeks, like Fontanelle Forest area in Omaha, for instance. But of course, they are pretty destructive on a lot of domestic plants, a lot of gardens, a lot of flowers, a lot of shrubbery. So although some people will see deer and think it's really awesome, other people see deer and say, oh no, my petunias, you know, my carrots, whatever. So deer do come in contact with people a lot when they're near those areas. And it's often not a good thing for the deer. Deer also can't be rehabbed very easily because deer do sometimes have chronic wasting disease, which is considered dangerous for, of course, cattle. So deer in Nebraska aren't really allowed to be rehabbed. Another one is groundhogs. They really don't live well around people. People just kind of move into their space and then they don't have anywhere else to go. So they try and do whatever they're going to do there. They like to be on small hills near water. And, you know, that's kind of where people like to be too. We have mountain lions. In Nebraska, mountain lions are fairly rare, but they are increasing due to range expansion, both from the north and from the west. And of course, although theoretically people think, oh, it'd be so cool to see a mountain lion, but maybe not so cool to see one in your yard or walking down your street, right? We have coyotes. Coyotes are less versatile, but they're often more aggressive than foxes, or at least more bold than foxes are. Most urban coyotes kind of go about their lives without anybody ever knowing they're there, of course. But coyote sightings are becoming more and more common in urban areas across the US, including the Omaha metro area. More people actually will see coyotes and think it's a stray dog than they will foxes. Some people will look at a fox and think it's a dog. Coyotes kind of have that little advantage. They're a little more dog-like. So they kind of skate by a lot of times. There are lots of other animals too. We could go on with a lot of them. Things like porcupines and muskrats and armadillos now, at least in the southern parts of Nebraska. Badgers. So we have lots of other things too that could be in there. They're just ones that people don't encounter very much because, again, they don't do very well around people. So they either leave very quickly or, frankly, a lot of times they will die or get killed. So then we have kind of our types of interactions that we have with animals, with these urban wildlife. There can be positive interactions that are beneficial to us or beneficial to them or both, like building a bat box. That's great, right? Benefits them, gives them a place to be that's not in your attic. And also, you know, you don't have as many mosquitoes in your yard. It's a win-win, right? We can have neutral interactions where it doesn't really affect them or us. They're just kind of there. That's kind of how squirrels are. And of course, then there are negative interactions. And those negative things can be negative for the animals. Very often, you know, if they're getting into things that they shouldn't get into, they can get trapped, they can get injured, they can get killed. They can destroy property, which isn't good for people either. So I kind of want to focus on these negative interactions for this last part here. And that's kind of what happens when we have these negative interactions. So one of the things that we can do is rescue and release, right? By rescue, I mean, you know, you get them out of the situation they're in and you let them go right away. So like this is a raccoon with his head stuck in a jar. And if you are able to remove that jar, then the raccoon can just go on about his business as long as he's not actually injured, right? So that's what I mean by rescue. Another thing that we can do is to remove them. And this is a lot of what Nebraska Wildlife does is they will take animals that people consider a problem or a nuisance animal, and then they can move it slightly away. You can't move it too far from where you get it, but they can remove it from that location to a little bit further away. Another thing that they do a lot is to rehabilitate. If an animal is young or it's sick or injured, and you rehabilitate them with the idea of releasing them eventually. So you can release an animal where it is, you can release an animal somewhere a little further away, or you can take it in and take care of it for a while before you release it. In extreme cases, they do sometimes relocate animals, where you actually remove them to a very different spot. That's not really considered a good thing to do in most cases. Many animals do not adjust to a new environment, or you might be separating a family. But if it's a case where you know a person's going to maybe be killing that animal if it comes back to its location, or if it's a very aggressive animal or something like that, you might be able to move it further away. Of course, the ultimate bad negative reaction is the animal dies. There are accidents with cars. There is poisoning. There are traps. Animals may have to be euthanized because either they are diseased, or they've just bitten somebody and you have to check and see if they have rabies, or sometimes it's just because they're perceived as a pest. Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, for instance, is great about catching animals and taking care of them. A lot of pest companies that will remove animals from your home, a lot of them don't rehabilitate those animals or don't set them free. They just euthanize them. And I think a lot of people maybe don't know that. So, what can we do, right? First of all, we can have wild spaces. We can have nature corridors, parks and wetlands, like this Heron Haven in the bottom. This is a golf course up at the top. And those are areas where animals actually can live pretty well without coming into contact with people very, very easily. We can discourage them from interacting with us. Don't feed them. Don't feed coyotes and foxes and raccoons. They can actually get by just fine on their own without looking at humans as a food source. It's bad for them no matter what. They can learn to become dependent on people. They can also become habituated. So they become where they're not afraid of people, and then you're more likely to get a bite, and that animal's then going to be euthanized. Generally, if you can, just leave them alone. If they're in a place, many animals are only in those places temporarily. We get birds that nest in a light fixture we have every year. And although it'd be really easy to just tear it down every year, we let them stay because they're only there for, a month or two. And then the fledglings are gone and they move on, and then you can take it down, right? So if you can have some patience, just, let them go. And then, of course, helping them when it's necessary is kind of the last thing. If they are injured, if they are sick, if they are a baby that is orphaned, help them. The top picture, or the picture on the middle, is actually a picture I got from Nebraska Wildlife Rehab. It is a bat that's getting its jaw fixed by one of their vets. The one on the top right is when I was rehabbing animals for Nebraska Wildlife Rehab. That was one of our rehabs, was that little squirrel. So sometimes you do have to help them out and keep them for a little while, but in general, help them, and then we plan to let them go, not try and keep them with us. They're better in nature. All right, that's actually all I have for today. Just kind of basics, but I am certainly willing to take questions, and I do have a list of resources here too, which Nebraska Wildlife Rehab is on there.
Yeah, Gabby, can you send me your presentation? That'd be great. And then I'll send it out with the email if that sounds good. And then they'll have the your resources. Does that sound okay with you?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, and all of these are places that deal with wildlife specific issues here in Nebraska. So,
Okay.
and I've dealt personally with Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, who I have nothing but admiration for. I don't know the wildlife rescue team. That's in Lincoln, I believe. But they are also, or maybe it is more Western. I can't remember, but they also do wildlife rehab. The Raptor Conservation Alliance used to be Raptor Recovery. And then, of course, Game and Parks and the Extension has wildlife information on it too. The Extension Service for Nebraska is not really dealing with wildlife directly. It's more like giving you ideas on how to live with wildlife and how to deal with them. And I could tell you more about some of these places, but anyway, if anyone has questions or comments or anything, I'm happy to listen to them.
We do have a question in the chat. How do you become a rehabber? I think you mentioned you used to do it. Yeah, Gabby, and I know that Susanna and are all a part of that too. So if Gabby, if you know, and then Suzanne can speak to that as well.
Yeah, this is Suzanne. I'll just chime in. It's like to be the wildlife rehab used to do in-home based rehab. Now everything is pretty much done at the wildlife center here in Omaha, and animals come from all over. Being a rehabber takes a lot of training and education and work. Nebraska Wildlife is not licensing anybody. I mean, they have job openings and you can apply if you've taken the training. WRT are all home-based wildlife rehabilitators, and you'd have to contact them to determine, how you would go about becoming a rehabber with them. They do have a website, as she has on here too. It's in the state of Nebraska. There's the 3 organizations that Gabby's listed are the only ones within the state that are permitted to rehab.
Yes.
Every state's different. Some states, they've got hundreds of rehabbers. Others don't even permit rehab. So if you have questions, you can also reach out to Game and Parks to find out information on rehabbing, but they only issue 3 permits statewide, and that's it.
Yeah, and you do have to go through training classes, and there is a lot to it. And when I was doing it, it was all before the center opened up. So
Okay.
you would take animals you'd go and pick up animals and bring them to your home and take care of them 24/7 in your house. But yeah, they aren't really doing that too much anymore, I know.
To be a rehabber, it's a huge commitment, as Abby and Gabby knows. I did in-home rehab for quite a few years, but it's 24/7 and you're by yourself, and it's a lot of work and no sleep during baby season.
Yes.
I put some links in the follow-up email information about how to volunteer for Nebraska Wildlife Rehab and their trainings and things as well.
Yeah,
Glenn, go ahead.
I was just going to say, anyone who's interested, you can go to the website, and our volunteer coordinator, Sean, would be more than happy to share with you. And you can be trained on just about anything you can think of.
Yes.
It's pretty awesome.
Glenn, thanks for this contribution, Glenn. He says he's got a couple of beavers, about 2 blocks. He's got some beavers 2 blocks from his home, but he hasn't told anybody because we gotta be careful. We gotta take care of it. We don't want anyone to know that there's.
That's a good thing, actually, is to not tell officials if there are beavers.
Yeah. I have a creek.
Unfortunately, they don't like beavers on creeks. The way that our urban areas work, our creeks are made to keep flowing all the time. Now there is a beaver dam actually down in Elmwood Creek, which they know about. But it's created a nice little wetland and it's not impeding the creek flow. So if anybody ever wants to see that, it's right off the playground almost. And this time of year, it's really easy to go see it because it's, there's no leaves and undergrowth really. So, but you can just walk into the trees down by the creek and you can kind of see this big pond that's off the side of the creek. And that's a beaver pond.
Did you say that beavers were the incidentals? Is that right, Gabby? Were you categorizing them as an incidental?
No, more an accidental because
Accidental.
they don't really do well with people.
Yeah, there's
a lot of conflict with people.
Yeah, there's lots of controversy with beavers for sure. Yeah. And beaver ponds are so amazing. There's so much wildlife, and it's so interesting to, if you ever get a chance to hang out at beaver dams and beaver ponds, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, like I said, there's one right down at Elmwood Park in Omaha. If anybody wants to go see it, we were just there a few months ago and it was still there then. And officials were apparently leaving it at that point. So.
Any other questions? Feel free to pop them in the chat or just unmute yourself. That'll work too.
Just a comment about the beaver dam. We now have wood ducks that I hadn't seen before. This is right in the middle of the city, and it's the oh gosh, what's the name of it? The park. Can't remember. It's on 66 and Hartman, but wood ducks, minnows, and it's the city's been doing a lot of work with rain gardens in that area too. So experimental rain gardens. But,
Thanks, Glenn.
I see somebody, Belinda said, it's true many insects and other arthropods are with us no matter what. Many species are very much impacted by urbanization though. So like suburban lawns, urban pesticide use. Native bees and butterflies are two good examples. Also the base of the food chain, those creatures are important. And that's absolutely true. I will tell you, speaking as someone who very much appreciates wildlife, my neighbors hate me. Because my backyard is mostly, weeds, according to them at least. But I've got a lot of native stuff growing back there. We're actually in the process of introducing native plants on purpose. But we don't mow that often. We don't rake our leaves.
Sure, you're not alone with this. This is your cute. This is why we have found each other in the Nebraska Master Naturalist community.
So, and I'm always putting things up on Facebook about don't mulch your leaves. Leave your leaves over the winter. That's where the fireflies are.
What do you got, Glenn?
Oh, I can't resist making comments here. My backyard prairie's been there almost 30 years. And when I put up two big signs that said native flowers and grasses, they could see from the two signs in two different directions, my problems disappeared quickly. Just telling people what's going on back there. And then I've got positive comments from people before they didn't know what it was, including the city. And recently in Omaha, the regulations have changed considerably. There is no longer a term called worthless vegetation, and they really just realize that people are going to start using natives a lot more, and you're not going to have the problem with this inspector showing up and telling you to cut your weeds.
That's a really great point. And I think Lynn earlier up in the comments, it's an opportunity to spread understanding, education. It's a piece for connection and sharing that knowledge that we all have, right? Yeah, that was beautiful, Glenn.
And I have had actually the city come to me and say I had worthless vegetation in my yard to get rid of the thistles and the grasses, and I would get rid of exactly what they told me to and no more. So I get it.
There are native thistles, and they are very
Yes.
critical to monarch habitat.
That's what I told them, and they said that they were not differentiating at that point. So
They are now.
I left them. I left actually all my thistles until they stopped blooming, and once they stopped blooming, I pulled them up. So that's what I did. So yeah.
There's a comment in here from Mary too. She says that there seems to be more raptors in the cities. Is this a result of increase of prey animals in the cities? Do you have any information on that, Gabby?
Not specifically, but I think that that is a good guess as to why they're there. Because we don't exactly have great places for them to live, but we have some really great places for them to hunt. So, you know, with having a lot of squirrels, having lots of, you know, baby raccoons and having, you know, mice and things like that, absolutely. I'm sure that's why we get the red tails and everything else. In fact, I had just down the street from me last year, I had during baby season, we had found we saw a red-tailed hawk on the ground and stopped our car and right down the street from my house. And when we stopped the car, it took off and it looked like it had something in its claws. And when we went over there, we found a second baby raccoon. It had found two
Oh,
babies.
wow.
So it got one
Wow.
of them, but it left the other one. And we did call Nebraska Wildlife Rehab to come and get the baby raccoon. Because at that time I was no longer rehabbing. So obviously, I do follow the rules for rehab. I don't try and do it on my own, even if I could. I let the professionals do it now. So I do see there's another one. It says, we plant for pollinators and love our urban wildlife. The neighbors now ask us what eats any new plant, and they want to know why we have so much dill. They come to the yard to see our insects at work. Every few years, the city writes us up as having weeds. That was Deb Boracek. Yeah, me too. Like, it just happened this summer. I kind of what I did, my strategy was I put them off for several weeks at a time. And it was right around the time we had those big high winds. So everybody was so busy anyway. And then by the time they were ready to come and check my yard out again, everything had stopped blooming anyway. So it was okay for me to cut it all. So I just kind of put them off as much as I could to give those insects and things a little extra time. And yeah, Diane here says all plants in my backyard and now front yard are mostly native plants. I do have a couple pollinator signs. I have heard that that's a good thing to do. I haven't done it yet, to get pollinator signs up so that your neighbors know you're trying to grow them on purpose, that you're not just letting your yard go. So that might be a strategy for people too.
I think that there's been so much education, especially because the poster child for pollinators is the monarchs and that migration. And there's just been so much education for pollinators that I think that's definitely in the hearts and the minds of more people than I think we even realize. I'm gonna go ahead and end the questions there. If you have more questions, I will put Gabby's contact information in the follow-up email.
Sure.
And I'll put Pollinator Alliance too on the for signs. Thank you, Kathy. I'm just going to go over a few things that are so you can I'll get Gabby's sorry, I skipped over in my brain. I had completed that sentence. I will get you Gabby's contact information. You can ask her some further questions. I am now going to just give you some upcoming events that we have going on, or just keep you in touch with what's going on with the program, the greater program. Can I have you stop sharing your screen, Gabby?
Oh, yep. Sorry.
No worries.
All right.
I forgot about it too. Thank you so much. That was great, Gabby.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you're new, we have evaluations for this Nebraska Master Naturalist, this specific presentation. That link will come out with you, the follow-up email. Please fill it out, that this is how your voice is heard. This is how I gather information on what, and I'm pulling together the 2025 Nebraska Master Naturalist speakers present, for the next year. So if you have ideas or suggestions for presenters, feel free to add that into the evaluation. Let's see here. Please log your hours as we're coming up on the end of the year. Track It Forward is our new tracking system. If you have any questions, if you need your username and password, please email me. I'll get you that information. I'll hop on a Zoom call with you to get you through it. If you need, if you're having any kind of problems at all, it's not a big deal. That's my job. I'm here to be of service. Also, tracking these hours is really important. It's one of the metrics that we use to determine the success of the program, and also like the value of your time, so it's a fundamental piece of understanding the work that you're doing, the beautiful work that you're doing. The last Master Naturalist Mondays of the 2024 season will be on December 16th. We will be covering something about community science. We do have a new community science specialist at the Game and Parks Commission, Bree Nugent. She's also a fellow Nebraska Master Naturalist. So she just got that job. So there's a little bit of transition into that position. So we'll see how I will be advertising that, promoting that, so you'll get an update on what the content of that presentation is going to be. I will not be there. I'm going to be on vacation. December seems to be the best time for me to skedaddle out of here for a little while. So Allie Mays will be heading that presentation, so I'll be missing you. But I will be back in January. Our first Master Naturalist Mondays of 2025 will be on January 13th, and we're going to do a year in review. We're just going to take a stock, let everybody know what's been going on. Maybe we'll go through some of these evaluations. I'll share some photos. I will send out this promotion. I see you in there, Ned. That's you. Look at you. And I just want to let you know that the dates for the 2025 season for Master Naturalist Mondays will be going up on the website. And once that's happening very soon, and I'll send out an email on the listserv. I'll put it on our social media platforms so everybody can be up to date on what's going on with Master Naturalist Mondays. I really appreciate your support this season. You all have really seemed to really enjoy these, and I'm glad for your feedback and your support for this series. I think it's been a success, and it's because you guys keep showing up and giving me your feedback and telling me what you want. So I really appreciate that. Let's see. We also, I think there's one more in here. No, that's it. I also want to let you know that there will be, I'll be communicating to you about the annual events, for the 2025 season. That'll all be coming out. The training dates for the 2025 season and the dates and locations have all been set. I'm going to put those out on the website and promote them out on the listserv. So all those dates are set and locations are set. I'm just going to get that all out to you. The reunion date is set. We're working on the fall conference. We do have the fall conference date and location. So all those dates are going to be set right here at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. And also we do have a member recognition event for our Nebraska Master Naturalists that will be happening in February. So that date and all those details, we have a meeting tomorrow, and we will final it with the member committee. God bless the member committees. And we will get that informational and promotion will go out to you very, very soon too. So you can get those out on your calendar and you can make sure that you're in attendance. So we're at 1:30. We got lots of thank yous, Gabby, and lots of love. And I'm grateful for you all. Thanks for showing up today. Have a good rest of your Monday. I know it's raining. We need that rain. It's like a lovely, gloomy, wet fall day. Have a good one, everyone.